parlementaire. Resuming debate, the honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Chair, and I will be splitting my time with the member for Lanark, Frontenac, Lennox and Addington. It is truly tragic, Mr. Chair, that in 2015 this House finds itself that it must again recognize the pervasive existence of anti-Semitism in Canada and around the world. Despite the best efforts of parliamentarians and private citizens and the vigilance and determination of organizations such as B'nai B'rith Canada, the Jewish community's foremost human rights agency, active in Canada since 1875, anti-Semitism, humankind's original hatred, remains alive and hatefully well in Canada and abroad. B'nai B'rith's most recent annual audit of anti-Semitic incidents, April last year, revealed that Canada-wide incidents of vandalism and violence increased by 21.6% and 7.7% respectively over the previous year. Frank Diamond, just retired as the CEO of B'nai B'rith Canada after 36 years, said of the audit, "The sustained level of anti-Semitism in Canada when taking a 10-year view, which shows a 49% jump, should be of great concern to all Canadians." But Mr. Diamond feels that numbers are only part of the story, Mr. Chair. He said, and I quote, "What we are hearing is a growing sense of dread among Canadians. Hatred of Jews has veered so far into normative discourse that it is no longer seen to be wrong." Mr. Chair, Canadians can remember brief periods in recent decades when we might have thought, wishful thinking perhaps, that anti-Semitism was a vile phenomenon of the past, but then became a resurgence of both classic and hybrid hate. In my riding of Thornhill, anti-Semitic vandalism and graffiti, swastikas over the Star of David. In Montreal, firebombings of Jewish businesses, desecration of Jewish cemeteries, anti-Israel rallies during periods of Mideast tension deteriorated into openly, in some cases, violently anti-Semitic events in Calgary, in Mississauga, and in Toronto. And of course, on university campuses across the country, not all, but far too many, Israel Apartheid Week. Mr. Chair, Israel Apartheid Week and the boycott, divest, sanction movement represent hybrid anti-Semitism. Proponents, propagandists for IAW or BDS say they are not anti-Semites, that they have nothing against the Jewish people but are merely against Israel, the Zionist state, the Zionist entity. Mr. Chair, Zionist has become the hate-mongers' code word for Jew. Our government has consistently supported Israel's right to defend itself. The only democracy in the Mideast is under constant threat and regular attack by terrorist entities and quasi-states, not to mention the threats, both tangible and bombastic, from Iran. Israel may not be perfect. Our government also recognizes the principle of fair criticism. But as Prime Minister Harper has said, whatever Israel's shortcomings, neither its existence nor its policies are responsible for the pathologies of that part of the world. Mr. Chair, I was proud to be a member of the Canadian Parliamentary Coalition to Combat Anti-Semitism. I believe you'll hear in greater detail in this area from my colleague from Lanark, Frontenac, Lennox and Addington. But in closing, I would like to refer to a central conclusion of our inquiry panel report. It pointed out that criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitic in itself, but that denying its right to exist or seeking its destruction can be considered anti-Semitic acts. The panel also recommended, Mr. Chair, that police forces across Canada be better trained to deal with anti-Semitism, that universities do more to counter Israel Apartheid Week, that education regarding human rights be a bigger part of welcoming programs for new Canadians, and finally, that the House Foreign Affairs Committee study the United Nations, I quote, overemphasis of alleged human rights abuses by Israel while ignoring human rights abuses of other member states. Mr. Chair, just as I believe that vigilance is the price of freedom, so too eternal resistance is an essential, I believe, in the fight against anti-Semitism and the defense of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Thank you.